Everybody, the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I'm your co-host, Billy Muzio. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Jody Smith. We're going to be walking through a few different things today. We're going to talk about the quarterback position. There's a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position this week, especially this week, Jody, with the news of Josh Allen as well as Matt Stafford. And then we're going to go on and talk the running back position a little bit. We're going to talk about DeAndre Swift and what should fantasy managers be doing with DeAndre Swift. Then we're going to move in the tight end position with Darren Waller being placed on the IR. Talk about Foster Moreau, and then, of course, answer all your start-sit questions today with Thursday Night Football around the corner. So let's just dive right into it, Jody. Quarterback has been tremulous position this year, honestly. And this season, on top of it, this week in general, Josh Allen is looking doubtful. Stafford, concussion protocol now, looking doubtful. Aaron Rodgers and Kyler are both banged up. How much do you trust the likes of somebody like Case Keenum or John Wolford as competent backups being slid into a system that they're already familiar with? Or are you going to be looking at players like Jacoby Brissett, PJ Walker, Davis Mills, maybe Heineke, maybe Dalton, in place of those two quarterbacks?
Given a choice over guys that are complete unknowns, I'd rather stick with Andy Dalton or one of those guys that we've actually seen at least be kind of competent. Case Keenum, he's had a little bit of success here and there. I think he had a couple of games last year where he threw 20 plus attempts, basically got a couple of starts. I think he failed to get up to 200 passing yards in either game, but he did throw 3 touchdowns, and he can run a little bit. But this is what I've called, this is a transitional year for the quarterback position, because it feels like everything we thought we knew last year isn't necessarily true this year. We've seen Russell Wilson fall off the map. Aaron Rodgers doesn't look like anything like we expected in his little rebound that he had last year. And Matt Stafford, the guy was some fantasy MVPs last year, and now here he is hovering around QB 20 for the season. And not to mention, like you said, he was just added to the concussion protocol yesterday, which makes it highly unlikely that he's going to have time to clear that and start this game. But it might not matter, because the way he's played, obviously it's a downgrade to go to John Wolford, who we know basically nothing about. It would be a downgrade for the Rams, you would think, but from a fantasy perspective, I can't imagine too many people that are in the playoff mix this far in the season are still relying on Stafford, other than a disappointing QB2 in a super flex format. It's just been, we've seen, kind of a youth movement overall at this position where, when healthy, we've seen Tua finally become the upside player that a lot of people were hyping this summer. Not necessarily myself, just because I thought there was a lot of things that still needed to be proven. And, when healthy, he's been proving it. We've seen Trevor Lawrence take a huge step forward, and he's hovering around QB1 territory. And like I said, it's been, and of course, Justin Fields has been out of this world over the last month or so, when they finally decided, hey, you know what, maybe a forward pass occasionally actually might help us overall. So like I said, it's been a transitional year for the position overall. And it looks like with the way things are heading here towards week 10, that the madness is just going to continue.
Yeah, Case Keenum in his limited time in starts, I should say, or just at the quarterback position behind center. Career average of 57.3% completion percentage, a 1.6 touchdown to INT ratio, passer rating of a 77.9. He's got 79 attempts in the past 2 years only, 62 completion percentage during that span. Where like John Wolford, on the other hand, he only has one game where he's got to start. He only has 42 attempts in his career in the NFL, 41.5% completion percentage.
Ouch.
He's thrown 0 touchdowns. He has 2 interceptions during that span and a 32.35% passer rating. That being said, Walford also had games where Cam Akers fumbled on the 2-yard line. He also beat Kingsbury in Arizona in a must-win game back in 2020 season. So here we are again facing Arizona in a must-win situation. in this division. And John Wolford may be looking to get the start again against the Cardinals. So I'm not trusting the likes of Wolford, though Case Keenum definitely, piques my interest. This offense is still the Buffalo Bills offense. And yes, Josh Allen is the one who's leading that team normally at helm. Case Keenum can just kind of slide into that and still has playmakers around him. So I'm a little bit more intrigued with Case Keenum than I am somebody like PJ Walker or like who's playing tonight in weather or even Andy Dalton, who's had some ups and downs. I understand the allure. Andy Dalton has a good matchup this week, but players like Tyler Heineke, who's been playing well, tough matchup against Philadelphia this week. I'd probably look elsewhere like Brissett if he's available on my waiver wire, but there is a few quarterbacks that I'd be playing Case Keenum over this week if I had the options, or no options, I should say, on my waiver wire. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift for a minute. So DeAndre Swift he's become a pain in the ass for fantasy managers. Drafted as a RB1 going in the first round, maybe the second round in some of your leagues. And week 1, he was the running back 3. Week 2, the running back 6. Week 3, running back 39 when he got injured, and then he was out for 4 weeks, came back, and we finished as first game back as running back 18. And then in week 9, he finished as running back 26. He is the running back number 2 in fantasy points per opportunity, so his explosiveness is still there. We all know that DeAndre Swift is a talented player. Another fun fact, he's actually number 30 in receiving yards across the running back position, despite missing 4 games and being limited in 3. What is your take on DeAndre Swift moving forward? Where does he fall in your rankings? Roughly, don't need the exact number, but where does he fit, fall in your rankings here so far in week 10? And do you trust him in your lineups as a fantasy manager?
Well, I mean, it's hard to have a talent. I mean, you mentioned earlier how good he was early in the season and how even limited, how involved he's been in the passing game. It's hard to take that kind of player and sit him. So that question is a little more difficult to answer because I'd have to know what are your other options. If you're really, stretching and going with one of the Rams running backs just because you're worried about DeAndre Swift, well, that doesn't make any sense. So it would depend on options. At this point, I feel like he had enough time to get healthy and they've kept him limited. And there's some coach speak out this week that they feel like he's going to slowly start progressing in the right direction, which obviously, we'd like to hear. But at this point, right now, because of the limited usage and the fact that Jamal Williams is basically taking the vast majority of all the rushing attempts now, and he's had the short yardage role pretty much locked up all season, it really limits DeAndre Swift. I mean, it's almost to the point where if you're in a antiquated standard league, that's where you can start thinking about, all right, maybe I sit Swift because, in PPR, he still is right up there, like you said, with all those targets. He's still, a guy that, worst case scenario, is probably a flex player, an RB3, and that's about where he'll come in my rankings this week. He'll come in probably, in the 20 range, maybe 22 to 28, probably somewhere inevitably is where he'll end up being this week. And, unfortunately, until we see his usage start to creep up in the right direction, and we're kind of hoping maybe this week it does. This is a game against the Bears. Isn't that right? Detroit's playing Chicago, right?
Yes.
That's a game that's got sneaky high scoring potential with the way Fields and the Bears have kind of really picked it up over the last month. It's just that, while Chicago's trending in the right direction, Detroit, since right before their bye, has been trending in the wrong direction. But, at this point, I probably am still trotting him out. Like I said, in particular on a week like this, when you have, 4 teams on bye. So, the options are more limited of who you're going to replace them with.
So DeAndre Swift, week 8, first game back from injury, 33 snaps, which was 55% of the snap share. Comes back in week 9 and only plays 10 snaps, Jody, 10 total. That's 16% of the snap share. Jamal Williams saw, where is it? Jamal Williams saw 61.3% of the snaps. Is this more to do with them preserving DeAndre Swift, and maybe there's more to this injury than we are led to believe, or is this more about Jamal Williams and how well he's been playing? Maybe a combination of both. What's your take on this backfield?
I think with last week, maybe the snaps were so limited because Detroit was kind of ahead the whole time against Green Bay. I mean, they were just content to not take too many unnecessary risk and to just sit back. And I want to say that Jamal Williams had a season high. What do you have, 24, 25 rushes last week? And, that formula obviously worked. Aaron Rodgers throwing 3 red zone interceptions didn't hurt, but we haven't heard that Swift aggravated anything or he's re-injured. If anything, like I said, Campbell has come out and said, we feel like he's getting healthier. We just have to keep him kind of limited until he gets there. So,
yeah, Jamal Williams saw season high 24 attempts, only 81 yards, no score. Pretty pitiful 3.4 average. That was his second lowest of the season. And one of the few times he has not scored all season. The only time he really hasn't scored outside of that on the ground was in week 7, week 5, and then week 2. So, it wasn't his best performance year to date, but definitely had control of the rock and helped them hammer out a win. Looking at running backs, you said that it depends upon the options that you have at the position. I'm going to list a few names and just throw them out there, and I want you to say if you'd start them over DeAndre Swift, yes or no. So name number 1 would be Donta Foreman this week against Atlanta tonight.
Yeah, I probably would start Foreman. He absolutely destroyed the Falcons just 2 weeks ago. He ran for, I don't know, 118 yards, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, of course, we can't expect him to repeat that number, but in a game that has a pretty low over-under, weather could be a factor tonight. I feel like Foreman, if he's a guy that I was lucky enough to get on the waiver wire, he's a guy I'm probably plugging in tonight.
Okay, so you'd start Foreman over Swift. How about somebody like Aaron Jones coming off his injury from last week?
Yeah, that's a little more complicated because normally, Aaron Jones is going to be an RB1 on every ranking and every list, but Green Bay's offense has just looked so dysfunctional, and the real concern would be, Jones's health and all that. It would depend on closer to game time for both games what we hear about Jones, but right now, if I'm having to set a lineup for Sunday and I have to set it now and I can't touch it, I would go with Swift over Jones.
Okay, how about Antonio Gibson? Last week saw 57.8% of snaps with J.D. McKissick ruled out with his neck injury. Are you starting Antonio Gibson or would you start DeAndre Swift?
I probably would lean Gibson here because it's starting to look like McKissick's going to miss another game. So, all those passing targets and attempts should go to Gibson. And we haven't really seen a lot out of Brian Robinson ever since he scored on that. I think it was a Thursday game. And since then, he hasn't really been able to do much with the opportunity. So, I feel like when J.D. McKissick gets ruled out, I'll have them ranked pretty similar. But I think Gibson might come out a spot or two ahead.
Okay, staying at the running back position, I want to talk about Miami's backfield right now. First week, Jeff Wilson shows up. I mean, we talked about it last week. He had some familiarity with the system. He had, was reunited with McDaniel. He had been in the backfield before with Raheem Mostert. You look at the snap counts of this backfield last week, and Jeff Wilson immediately stepped in and took on 49.1% of that snap share. Raheem Mostert saw 47.4%. They both saw 39.1% of the rush share, which was 9 attempts each. And Wilson did more with those touches. However, Raheem Mostert did get the touchdown. That being said, how do you think this backfield will be split moving forward, and which back would you rather own?
Well, it feels like exactly what we saw last week is probably what they kind of envisioned the role being, and which is pretty much a 50-50 split. Both guys have familiarity with the coaching staff and with each other and with the system. So I think it's a little marriage that could kind of work out. That said, Wilson looked a little, and considering, it was a short week for him to get used to that system, to get used to the new environment and to come in and to actually, be more functional in the offense was pretty inspiring. So it feels like, Mostert probably is going to be, treated as the incumbent and to get more of the opportunities to open in games and to, if he can gain momentum in a contest and all that, they'll probably stick with him more so. Like maybe you'd see it slip to a 60, 65 to 40, 35 type split situation. But so like right now, I still would lean over Mostert because he has more established success in the system. But this week, I'm kind of interested in both of them because they both have potential in this matchup against Cleveland, which has been a bottom 5 defense against the run pretty much all year. There's been games and they've just been destroyed. Austin Eckler, and I know these guys are not Austin Eckler, but if you can combine their production, you can probably get pretty close to that. But Eckler was pretty much close to 200 total scrimmage yards and 2 scores a few weeks ago against this defense. So I have interest in both, but I feel like right now maybe Mostert's probably maybe 4 or 5 spots ahead of Wilson.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. How about, are you playing either of these guys over Swift this week?
No, as much as I think both of them have potential, it's that worry of how the carries are going to be divvied. So I don't think that. Well, you know what? Mostert may actually come out a slightly ahead of Swift, but again, I need
same tier for you.
Yeah, they're both guys that I think are middling RB2s at this point right now. But it might come down to when I look at the potential upside, be like, all right, well, I'm going to lean towards Swift because we know that he can be a top 5 guy when he's healthy. It's just that is he healthy, which is going to be the main thing.
Travis Etienne seems to have a stranglehold now as the lead back for Jacksonville. In his last 3 weeks, he has finished as the running back number 8, the running back number 7, and the running back number 3 in fantasy points. During that stretch, he has rushed for or had a total of 100 yards or more, 119 yards and a score, 162 yards and a score, 126 yards and a score. Is the new era of running back upon us? You just talked about a change of guard at the quarterback position. One could say the same at the running back position now with the likes of Walker now in the top 10, Etienne in the top 10. What's your take on these new and young running backs who have emerged in the NFL, and what does their future hold for the coming weeks?
What's funny, I remember talking to you in the preseason of how one of the adages coming into a season is that the age 27 for running backs, and that like how no running backs older than 27 have been top 5 running backs over the last, I think it was handful of years, 4 or 5 years. I can't remember those stats anymore, but it was like, so there were some red flags of guys like Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones and whatnot. Well, Henry's been fine, but predictably, the other guys have tailed off. And I think with that position that, it is what it is. We weren't expecting to see Kenneth Walker necessarily come out of nowhere, but Billy, you and I were both huge proponents of Travis Etienne. We talked about him numerous times, and we backed it up by drafting him and getting him in the Kings Classic auction this year. And it's come through, so it's been tremendous to see that. But yeah, it probably, running backs have such a short shelf life when it comes to looks at production. Not that long ago, Zeke Elliott was a perennial top 5, top 10 running back, and now you're going to see Zeke. We don't even know where he's going to be next year, but no one in fantasy is going to take him. It's going to be like last year when we all were getting Leonard Fournette in like round 11. So it's a short shelf life for running backs, and it's always good to be attacking that position. Youth at that position, especially in dynasty formats. But it's been encouraging to see Etienne. Once he finally got those opportunities and proved he was healthy, he's come on and been the player that we all kind of thought he was going to be last year.
Yeah, last week, 81.2% of snaps, third most amongst the running back position. Only 2 ahead of him were Alvin Kamara at 88.2, Dalvin Cook at 86.4. Damon Pierce Another rookie out here. I say Travis Etienne like he's a rookie because he didn't play this rookie year. But we have Damon Pierce, 78.3% of snap share. Kenneth Walker, 76.7%. And then you have Ramondre Stevenson, 73%. So these young backs taking on a lot of the workload. Yes, there have been some other injuries in some of those backfields too, or trades. A lot of things that have shaken them up. But encouraging to see the volume for those backs, especially in their young careers. Talking about volume, A.J. Dillon is probably slated to see a little bit more volume this week for Green Bay with Aaron Jones a little banged up. It has, to this point, been pretty much a disappointment inside, I should say, at least compared to where we drafted him in drafts. What is your take on A.J. Dillon this week? Are you trusting him in your lineup, or are you kind of staying away from Packers right now?
If at all possible, the only Green Bay Packer that I would feel comfortable with right now is Allen Lazard. And what's funny about that is how poorly Aaron Rodgers has played. You would feel like you'd want to avoid him, but they still seem like he's clearly their number one, and he looked for him, and he clearly last week getting a touchdown. That's where he's going to impact. But I'm only going to have interest in A.J. Dillon if Aaron Jones is ruled out, because I expected a slight bump last week for Dillon, and he actually got it, but he still wasn't very productive, and not much is going right for Green Bay at all. And now they're facing they're playing the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, they're playing the Cowboys. Yep.
Yeah. See, that's not necessarily a defense I want to target. Dallas has been a little better, gets the pass than the run, but it doesn't feel like with the way Green Bay is playing right now, this feels like the kind of situation where the Packers could fall behind pretty early. And without Aaron Jones in there, I don't know that A.J. Dillon, did they trust him to be that same type of player? Dillon's been fine as a receiver in the past, but I don't feel like, even with all the other receivers potentially out, it doesn't feel like the kind of situation where Green Bay would necessarily want to have Dillon out there getting 5, 6, 7 targets. So he could, if Aaron Jones is rolled out, I think Dillon can come in around RB25, in that same range as DeAndre Swift. But and without Aaron Jones, I might actually target Dillon ahead of Swift, only because of potential volume. If he can get himself that 3 to 5 targets out of the backfield. And, we saw last week they were willing to give him a lot of carries, even though he was inefficient, as he has been most of the season. But it feels like, he'd be a pretty good shot at, 20 touches. And we certainly can't say that about Swift right now.
Yeah, Dallas, a top 5 defense versus the running back position. Though Dillon, like I said, has disappointed season to date. Outside last week, so last week he was running back 30. Prior to that, weeks 1 through 8, he's only finished inside the top 30 on 2 occasions. Week 1, he was running back 9, and week 6, running back 22. Outside that, he's been running back 35 or worse in every single week. I mean, where people were taking him in drafts versus his output right now, it's probably one of the bigger disappointments at the running back position. And I don't think I trust it this week, even if Aaron Jones is out. Moving on to the tight end position, this one shocked me quite a bit. So I was looking up snap shares, and they said last week prior to the game that T.J. Hawkinson had put in the work, put in extra time to learn the playbook, and he was going to be a big part of the game plan. I didn't believe it, because anytime you have a player who's switching teams and going to a new system with a new coach, a new quarterback, learning a new playbook, it takes time for them to learn that offense and for them to learn, just put it all together, right? And you look at T.J. Hawkinson last week, and he ran 90.9% of snaps for this offense at the tight end position. And then you take a look at Johnny Munt, who ran his season low 22.7% of snaps. What is your take on T.J. Hawkinson moving forward? With that type of volume, 90% snaps, you see a 23.1% target share in his first week on this offense. That type of volume, that type of snap share, if that continues, would you put him up there with the likes of Kelsey, a healthy Andrews moving forward?
No, they're in a tier by themselves, but you can put Hawkinson in that second tier of tight ends. What was great last week is it was a season high for him with 9 catches, but 100% catch rate. Caught all 9 of the targets thrown his way, and that's phenomenal. Like you said, Billy, when you're trying to learn timing and intricacies with a new quarterback all in 1 week's time or just a few days, a couple of practice sessions. So that was phenomenal. So you have to walk away from last week being really, really encouraged with how much he was involved in an offense right away. Still didn't score, but hey, if he's going to be getting 9 targets a week, who cares? It'll only just hurt KJ Osborne. You have to Hawkinson. I felt like we talked last week before this game that I felt like it was a neutral move for him because while the Vikings presented better opportunity for him to succeed and maybe make the playoffs. I mentioned that I thought with the way they've been playing recently that the Vikings were probably a slight improvement over Detroit. And last week, that's exactly what we saw. The Lions continue to kind of founder as we've seen, right before they went into their bye week. I think the Cowboys shut them out, and it's been all kind of like a whole different team than we saw the first 6 weeks of the season. But you have to like Hawkinson, what we saw in the first game. I feel like he can be in that second tier of weekly tight ends, maybe up there with Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, in that top 5 range, that top 6 weekly range. So, it's like we said last week. I felt like it was a whole, maybe a slight improvement, maybe a slight decline, but what we saw in the first week, but it certainly looked like maybe a big increase for him moving forward.
Next player I want to talk about, and the last player of the day before we move on to the start sit questions, is Foster Moreau. Darren Waller placed on IR today after re-aggravating that hamstring injury. Another disappointment of the season. But Foster Moreau now steps into a every week starting role. Last week he saw 96.6% of snaps. That's a lot. It's a lot of snaps. Although he only saw 5 targets, only catching 2 of those for 42 yards. What do you think of Foster Moreau moving forward? Are you comfortable streaming him? Is he a top 15 tight end moving forward? Top 20? What's your take on Foster Moreau?
Yeah, he's going to be around that range because we've seen him. He hasn't been quite as effective as Darren Waller, but hey, how many tight ends are even in the fact that the couple of road games and it was a couple of losses for the Raiders, but you have to like that Foster got 14 targets in these last couple of games. He's averaging, I want to say 6.5, 6.7 PPR points, which, like I said, that's a hair behind Waller, but he's gonna be out there running a lot of routes now, and it feels like he's proven that he's got the trust of Derek Carr. Maybe he's not going to be targeted quite as much as Darren Waller, but it doesn't feel like it's a huge drop off where we see with a lot of elite talents. Like if you took Travis Kelce out of Kansas City, well, they're just going to change their whole offense and just kind of probably avoid tight ends for the most part, or you're not going to know who they're going to go with. But it feels like the Raiders are pretty comfortable that, hey, you know what, maybe we won't go as deep as much, but I think we're okay at tight end. So I think it's pretty comfortable to think that I'd be happy if I was able to get Foster Moreau off the waiver wire a couple of weeks ago. That I'd be pretty comfortable with thinking that he's got on a week-to-week basis, he's got tight end 1 upside, but I feel pretty comfortable with him around tight end 15 weekly.
Okay, I like it. Let's move on. We have a bunch of start-sit questions in here, and I have to head off to my kids' school function today, so I want to run through these start-sit questions. A lot of questions with Thursday Night Football, but let's start from the top. PPR, need to start 3, ETN, Swift, Jamal, Foreman, Hunt, and Mostert. So start 3 of that group. I'll repeat it again. ETN, Swift, Jamal, Foreman, Hunt, and Mostert. That's the question.
Well, you're starting ETN no matter what every week, regardless of format, regardless of, if you're punished for starting Jacksonville Jaguars players, you still start ETN. And Well, Foreman, we hit on a little earlier. I feel like right now I'd feel more comfortable with starting Foreman tonight than I will over Swift. But if you're starting three, I want to say I think right now Swift would probably come in third. I don't remember the other two guys that were up there. Kareem Hunt. Gosh, it feels like, Billy, what do you think when it comes to touches? Who do you feel more comfortable with right now? Because that's what it would come down to for me.
Between who?
Both are secondary backs. You've got Cleveland and Miami. It feels like a game that's got a lot of potential scoring appeal. So maybe Hunt's a little more involved as a receiver. So I might feel more comfortable with him right now over Swift.
Yeah, for me, it's Etienne is the easy one in. Foreman is actually the next easy one in for me. Mm-hmm. And the question for me is Jamal or Swift, and I lean Jamal right now based upon the snaps counts that we've seen the last few weeks in Detroit. As well as, even when Swift was fully healthy, Jamal Williams was the goal line back.
Jamal was the guy I was for getting in there. Yeah, we saw 24 carries last week, so gotta like the usage there.
Yeah, gotta like the usage, but more importantly, we talk about the red zone, right? And the red zone is where he was already involved in the red zone prior to Swift's injury, and now we're just seeing it even more so. So I lean Jamal over Swift, even though Swift has the higher upside, in my opinion. Same individual, different question, half PPR. Kamler out. With Kamler out, does Sutton move up over playing someone like DJ Moore or Josh Palmer?
No, I you look at the over-under on the Denver game. It's 37.5, and that's remarkable considering how bad the Titans' defense has been. That Vegas still thinks that this is going to be a struggle, low-scoring game, and that Denver isn't going to be able to correct anything coming out of a bye. It's a concern for me. Sutton's been pretty bad recently here, so he's not a guy I would go out of my way to plug into any matchup. You remember what DJ Moore just did to Atlanta? Now, I don't expect a repeat of that. Like I said, tonight's going to be, a little bit of weather might be a factor. And I'm sure the Falcons, even though AJ Terrell's still out of this game, so it's still the same kind of banged up secondary. But even after the dud last week, I still would start DJ Moore over Cortland Sutton.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going DJ Moore over Sutton. Sutton just hasn't been playing well. And quite frankly, I'm going to be also playing Palmer. Palmer's seeing a lot of targets right now with everyone banged up as well. So I'm Sutton's probably number 3 in this list for me.
Agreed.
When we talk about the weather tonight, I don't think it's going to be as bad as people are thinking. So
probably not. It's 55% rain, which, it's more like a wind thing, and it doesn't feel like I think I saw something between 11 and 13 miles an hour. That's not really anything that's too much of a problem. It could, it just depends on if it starts downpouring in the middle of the game. That's where it becomes a concern for the passing game.
So breakdown per quarter, that's why I really like NFLweather.com, because they give you a breakdown of expected per quarter, right? And you look at it, wind's supposed to be about 11 to 13, like you said, the entire time. Then you look at the rain, and you look at how much it's supposed to rain, and the precipitation. It's all on there as well. It's supposed to be light rain throughout the entire game as of right now. I'm one that always likes to compare to aviation weather. Being a pilot, aviation weather's not really wrong. It's especially on the day of, you can usually get pretty accurate weather. So I just want to show this. Real quick. So I pulled this up. Let me just pull this up over the screen. I'll put us down here. Let me get this off. So as of right now, 5 o'clock my time, which is game time. 12 to 19 not wins. This is of course in Charlotte International, so this is not right at the stadium. And this is looking at cloud coverage a little worse here over the cloud coverage for. Let me pull that up real quick for you around just around the airport. But you got. Let me click here. Sorry. Wind is the only thing, 12 to 19, but it says light rain and showers. It does go to moderate rain at 7 p.m., but it's still going to be light rain again after that. So I don't think it's going to be as bad as people are expecting and weather-wise. So I initially was going to be straying away from this game, and I'm not going to be targeting this game. But if I have players like Terrace Marshall, who I were thinking about, putting in the flex, or somebody like DJ, who was in my receiver position, I'm probably leaving them in those positions and not taking them out for lesser options. Let's move on to the next question we have. Okay. Half PPR, Komet or Dolchich? I go Dolchich pretty easily.
Yeah, the guy was pretty lights out the last couple of games before the bye. But again, I just mentioned it's a great matchup, but that 37.5 over under in that game's telling us that it could be a little ugly. And then you're looking at, listen, it's still going to come down to sheer volume. Komet has definitely taken a step in the right direction. He's finally gotten into the end zone a couple of times in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But I think when it comes down to volume in a case like this, I'm still going to lean towards Dolchich. I can understand what you're thinking when Komet. He's hot. This is a game that has a lot of scoring potential, but I still feel like Dolchich, he's going to be easily a top 15 tight end for me this week, whereas Komet, even with a little recent hot streak, I still don't necessarily trust him. I mean, it's like I feel like Komet's Billy is one of the guys that kind of burned us. He's a guy we were real high on all this summer, and even though we're starting to see everything in Chicago, rounding into form and looking a little better, I still feel like I'm a little hesitant.
Yeah, I'm hesitant as well. I just don't fully trust him, and Dolchich has been such a heavily involved piece of the offense since his return, or I should say his career started in the NFL.
What I would tell the person to ask this question is, if you're really torn, it comes down to gut. I mean, just because maybe Billy and I are leaning one way, but your gut's telling you to stick with the hot hand and commit. Maybe you should do that, because a lot of times I give people that advice, not because I'm trying to evade answering something, but because I feel like, I've been a pretty astute player for a long time. So I generally have learned to trust my instinct and to go against, good, solid advice sometimes. And it feels like that generally comes through for me more often than maybe trusting someone else's opinion when what was inside me was telling me to go the other way.
Dolchich, though, a lot of target share, 19.2% target share in week number 8, 20% target share in week 7. So lots to like about Dolchich. For me, it's a pretty easy answer. I'm going Dolchich. Next question is Wandale versus Houston or Terrace Marshall tonight with weather reports.
What's funny is Houston's pass defense and secondary has actually been
really good.
Rated. It's actually been really pretty good from a standpoint, but considering how badly PJ Walker played last week, I'd be real hesitant. It feels like I told Billy before he went on air, I'm a little concerned with Walker. Like, it feels like an interception or three straight drives of 3 and out could get him on the bench, and then all things potentially go bonkers after that. It could work to his benefit if Baker gets in there and starts throwing things out, or it could continue to spiral. This one feels like a little closer call to me, despite the fact that the matchup clearly favors Marshall in this game. I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like Wandale's fixing to have a big game personally. I think the smart play would probably be to stick with Terrace Marshall, just because he's been pretty good over the last 2 or 3 games, even with that the poor performance from Carolina last year. The garbage points add up. So I probably would. I probably will have Marshall ranked ahead of Wandale, but it's probably closer than you think. Like I said, I feel like Wandale's fixing to have a pretty big game, and coming out of bye, they've had time to work on some things, and like, again, Texans been pretty good against the pass.
Very good versus the pass, actually. They're number 4 secondary against the wide receiver position in the NFL. Number 3 Seattle, just as we all drew it up, right? And then Terrace Marshall snaps, though, 91.8% in week 9, 92.5% in week number 8. A lot to like about Terrace Marshall, like you said. Last week saw 6 targets and 1 touchdown. The week before saw 9 targets, 87 yards. I'm going to go with the player that I've liked this entire time, and it's Terrace Marshall for me. I liked his tape coming out of college. I'm excited to see him get a larger opportunity. I know the weather is less than stellar, but it's not enough to scare me away from Terrace Marshall. Next question we have is full PPR, Judy or Josh Palmer?
Again, we've talked about Denver a couple times and the over-internet game. Despite the really inviting matchup against the Titans defense that's given up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, I still am still hesitant in this particular game. Who was the other matchup?
Palmer versus San Francisco.
Palmer, right? Yeah, I'm expecting Mike Williams and Keenan Allen to be out of that game again. And Palmer showed last week that kind of acting in that number 1 role that the targets are going to be coming. So yeah, it's a pretty easy decision for me.
Yep, pretty easily for me as well. I mean, Judy has been playing a lot better with Wilson the last couple of weeks. Not last week with bye, of course, but the weeks prior had come on pretty hot down those last couple of weeks. But when you have an unquestioned number 1 receiver on the field who's seeing that much snaps and that much targets, I'm going to lean that way as well. So I'm going to go with Palmer, same as you. Next question we have is supposed to start Kyle Pitts, but I want to play Dulcich instead. What do you guys think? Ooh, I like this one. Which way are you going here?
Pitts has been a guy that I get wrong every week because I start to move him down my ranks because he's not doing anything. He's not getting any volume, and then he scored. So I was like, okay, well they get me more involved here recently. They're throwing him some red zone targets, and then he put up another dud game. So I lowered him again, and then so it's just been frustrating. I need to look at how the Panthers have done against tight ends this year. Let's see.
Panthers versus the tight end are number 13 in the league, so 13th best.
They've been pretty average. So, I don't know. This one feels pretty close, but I can probably tell you from experience with fantasy pros that Dulcich will probably come in around somewhere between 12th and 14th for the week, and Pitts will probably be somewhere between 8th and 12th. So this would be a slight lean towards Pitts from most other experts. But like I said, man, so this game tonight opened up at 44 points. Now it's dipped down to 41.5, and now there's concerns with the weather and all that.
Dulcich right now ECR is tight end 7. Pitts is tight end 9.
7. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Tennessee Titans are the 3rd worst defense against the tight end position.
Okay. Well, that was my lean. We've talked about him a couple times already tonight, so that was gonna kind of be my lean. I just figured that the experts, that other people would be leaning the other direction, but
I can't pick a tight end in my life dependent on it in rankings right now. Top 10 in every other category. Tight end, it's like F them tight ends, Jody. I can't figure it out. So I'm gonna say Dulcich. That means you should probably start Pitts this week. Let's move on. Running back question here. Traded Hines, Damian Pierce, Keenan Allen for 2 parts. Higgins, Patterson, and Jeff Wilson. I think he's asking which side you like, even though the trade's done.
You're gonna
Hines, Damon Pierce, and Keenan Allen. Higgins, Patterson, Jeff Wilson.
Well, the best player in the deal is Pierce, and then let's pretend that Keenan Allen comes back. It feels like a pretty good landslide on that side.
Yeah, I think so as well, especially if Hines starts taking on more role here in Buffalo. I think Cook will probably start getting faded down more, and if Josh Allen's out this week, we'll probably see more of the running game. So, I think that side wins as well. Let's take a look at the next question. One's from Giselle. Always loyal to the show. Thank you, Giselle. George Pickens, Sutton, or Ertz PPR. Leaning Sutton, but I want to play Pickens for the heck of it. I actually go Ertz here. What about you, Jody?
Yeah, I probably would too. We've talked about Sutton a couple times tonight. While he is a locked in wide receiver 1, again, I'm looking at that line for Denver, and it's got me a little worried because you're matching up against the Titans defense that's been pretty terrible against tight ends and wide receivers and quarterbacks all year, but yet we're still looking at 37.5 over under.
Okay. Palmer, Rondell Moore, or Pittman? Pick 2.
Can't have nothing to do with Pittman right now because of the quarterback situation, which is unfortunate for me because he's a guy that I, pretty much drafted everywhere. He's a guy I had around, top 15 coming into the season, but it's just impossible to trust right now. Like the only thing that would make me even think about Michael Pittman in a lineup right now is if they said Matt Ryan was taken back over and it was a home game, because Matt Ryan was averaging something like 340 yards a game passing at home. On the road, he was terrible. That's about the only time I could consider Pittman at this point, and I don't believe that's going to happen this week. And do you really want to target Colts right now? I mean,
No.
what a week it's been for them.
Yeah, they have a coaching change now. Quarterback is an issue. They have JT back. They're going to use him a little bit more. I am straying away from Pittman this week and going Palmer and Rondell Moore with you. Next one we have is another one from Giselle. Herbert, Dillon, or Rashad White?
Herbert, Dillon, or Rashad White. Until we keep hearing this talk that Rashad White is going to start taking over more of.
He did see over 40% last week.
And he's starting to creep in the right direction. Meanwhile, Leonard Fournette had just plugging along. But I think until we see that come together on a field, the snap gets closer to 50-50, and he's a little more effective with his touches. I don't see how you can start him over the other two guys.
Okay. Yep, I lean Herbert here against Detroit. You got Herbert up until last week was the 7th best rusher in the league. Detroit is bottom 6 against the running back position. I'm going to go with Herbert here. Need one for the flex: DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, or Gabe Davis. Worried about weather and Josh Allen not playing due to injury. Could use A.J. Dillon. No, you cannot use A.J. Dillon with those options, so we'll stop there. So DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, or Gabe Davis this week.
If you're worried about the weather, I don't see any problem with swapping over to Devonta Smith. He's last week was a little bit of a disappointment for him, but gives you the opportunity to watch what could be a fun game on Monday night with him. They are playing Washington. Yeah, Washington secondary. It's nothing to fade. So they'll be in the same range for me this week. So if you're concerned about weather tonight, then I don't see any problem swapping over to Smith.
Yep, I agree with you as well. Next question we have from the Joker, full PPR, pick 2, Jamal Williams, Jeff Wilson, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, or Donta Foreman. That's a pretty easy one for me. I'm going Donta Foreman and Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. Again, Foreman destroyed Atlanta just 2 weeks ago. I know Hubbard's going to be back this week, so he could eat into the touches a little bit, but I still feel like Foreman is 15 plus touches, and Jamal Williams 24 last week. Have to like that usage right now.
Okay, back against the wall. He says gambling. Does he play Terrace Marshall tonight or Tony with the hope that Hardman misses the week?
Well, we just talked about how much we kind of liked Terrace Marshall. He's been on a little hot streak here, and even last week in a game that was, horrible. For the first half or 3 quarters, all of a sudden he still came through with pretty positive stats. I don't think. I mean, I understand you're gambling, but Tony, again, he only had a couple catches in his first game, and maybe his playing time starts creeping in the right direction. But Billy, I believe you said that Marshall has been over 90% of snaps the last couple of weeks. So
Yep.
there you go.
Yep, I lean Marshall here as well. You can't fully trust Tony in this offense quite yet. I mean, he has the ability to be a game changer and a league winner, in my opinion, but I just think that he needs to get worked into this offense a little bit more. This could be the week, but I'm going to lean Terrace Marshall. Do I trade Connor and Zeke for Taylor? I want the Taylor side.
Yeah, generally when there's a 2-for-1 or whatever, you're getting the better player in the deal. That's the side you want to be on. James Conner and Zeke for Taylor. It feels, with the way Taylor's been so disappointing in and out of the lineup, feels like it's a little, maybe a bit much, but I still, if that's the trade, I think I would take my chances on it. And maybe it's the coaching staff change is just what they need. And Jeff Saturday comes in and says, no, he's getting 30 touches and he's practicing fully. So you have to like that.
Next question we have is Patterson tonight or wait on Pollard with the Zeke news. I'm waiting on Pollard.
Patterson got you a couple touchdowns last week, but I want to say he pretty much split carries or opportunities with Tyler Algier. So it feels like right now Patterson is around maybe 12 to 14 touches, and that's right about what you expect to get out of Pollard too. So
Patterson saw 54.2% of snaps last week, 24 snaps. 39.3% of snaps, 24 snaps. I butchered that one quite a bit. But yeah, 39.3% of snaps last week did get the touchdowns. But we saw what Tony Pollard was able to do when he was the lead back in that offense. So he was running back 4 on the week, I think. That's pretty electric. I'm willing to gamble on that one. Because even if Zeke's in, he's going to be limited, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, even with Zeke, I still feel like Pollard is going to be a 10 to 12 touch guy. So that it's going to be pretty similar to Patterson. It just feels like Patterson probably has a better chance of getting into the end zone because he's a better bet to get those short yardage touches. Pollard should be more involved as a receiver than maybe Patterson, but it's pretty close. I think overall, Patterson will probably come out a couple spots ahead of Pollard on my list, but I think Pollard is a fine fallback option. And again, if you think there's a chance Zeke is going to sit, then yeah, he's got an RB1 upside.
Okay, trade question for you. Which side do you like more, DeAndre Hopkins and Cook or Chubb and Lockett?
DeAndre Hopkins and Cook. Brent, which Cook?
I'm assuming that's Dalvin Cook.
Okay. For who?
Chubb and Lockett. I'm going D-Hop and Cook.
Yeah, I'm leaning the other way. Chubb is quite a bit better than Dalvin Cook, but I still feel like both of them are top 10 running backs. Yep. And DeAndre Hopkins is way better.
Love the hashtag analysis there. I agree. We're going to do one more question before we wrap it up. If we don't get to your question, because there's still a lot in the chat, we're not going to have time for all of them tonight. So if you did not get your question answered, head on over
Discord or Twitter, whatnot.
Yep. Hop on over to Discord, head over to the Muzio channel, and I'd be more than happy to get those answered for you. So last question of the night is another trade question from Trevor Smith. Keenan Allen, Hines, and Damon. Oh, we already answered that one. Okay, hold up. We get one more now. Let's take a look here. DPJ or Sutton this week? Sutton has been disappointing him every week. I feel you on Sutton. Which way you going here, Jody?
Donovan Peoples-Jones has been quietly pretty good, but I don't know that I have the stones. You know what? Against the Dolphins, who've been really, really porous on defense, that game's over-unders, I think, the second highest of the week. It feels like the wrong decision. It feels like we're overrating it because you're talking about a number 2 receiver on an offense, the passing offense that, hey, listen, if the Browns get their ground game going, they might not throw more than 22 passes, which is always a risk. However, you are playing Dolphins who have been, blowing people's doors off recently, so it feels like, the Browns are going to have to throw the ball 30 times. But it feels like you should stick with Sutton because he is the clear number 1 receiver. It is a good matchup. Again, we've talked 2 or 3 times about this game. I have concerns about that game, even though it's a great matchup. It feels like overreading it to start Peoples-Jones over Sutton.
It's getting cute, I think.
It's getting cute, but it kind of feels like the right thing to do. So, I don't know if that would help, but probably forced. I probably would lean Sutton.
Yeah, you look at rankings. Sutton's like wide receiver 31 right now. DPJ is at 40, but more than likely finishes in my wide receiver 36 range, which means this is a coin flip, right? And you hit the hammer on the nail. Tennessee, bottom 3 defense against the wide receiver position. They've given up 1,500 yards in the season already with 10 touchdowns. But Miami Dolphin is also a bottom 9 against the wide receiver position, 8 touchdowns and 1,400 yards. And then on top of it, they're probably going to get way ahead, like you said. Brissett's going to throw the ball close to 40 times a game. This one to me is a coin flip. I lean Sutton because of the talent. So if in doubt, I always go talent and hope that it comes through for the game. And I'm going to lean Sutton on this pick as well. That is it, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you are unable, or if we were unable to get to your question tonight, there is quite a few in there still. Head on over to the Discord channel over on Full Time Fantasy, and we'd be more than happy to get those answered for you. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow, actually. So tomorrow at, I'll post it on Twitter and on YouTube tonight. Jeff Radcliffe's coming on to talk football for Week 10, and then I'll be here also on Saturday night. So we got 3 shows this week for the Full Time Fantasy Podcast. Take care, and we'll see you all soon.